over what is going to be on the warrant this spring, or at least what we think is going to be on the warrant, just briefly. Nothing, no in-depth discussions, obviously. Set the calendar for the spring, and we need to assign a clerk. Somebody has to sign the meeting minutes from the last meeting. So also I'm going to, you can volunteer for a specific one. If not, I'm going to assign everybody a board just to stay in contact with. Sorry, my windows are open. The wind just got crazy. I'm going to assign everybody a contact. For example, select board, DPW, fire, town, what zoning, whatever. And all I want you to do is just send them an email, the chair, and say, I'm sort of your liaison with the advisory board. Could you please keep me updated? You know, if there's anything that advisory is going to need to know, like whether it's their schedule, when they're having their meetings, when they're, you know, approving things for the warrant, excuse me, whatever it may be, just so that we're not surprised. And also someone they can talk to should they need to about getting on our agenda, those types of things. So that's basically what I want to do. We still don't have anybody else join, so I think we'll just go ahead and go through with the warrant. Maybe somebody will pop in before we finish. So Blythe, you want to just give us a brief overview? I have notes.
Susan, do you need to do a roll call or any sort of opening preamble?
I don't think so if we're not voting, do I?
Good. He's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Okay. Advisory meeting being called to order via Zoom due to the COVID-19 pandemic that is still going on. Brian Pichkowski.
Here.
David Lutz. David Lutz.
Here.
Michael Huff.
Here.
Jamil Siddiqui.
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Here.
Kiara Moore. And not here yet. And Jackie Katz, not here. And we still have one opening left by Kristen. Last I heard from Jay, he had still not found anyone yet. Oh, it looks like Jackie just joined. I'll give her a second.
Sorry, hi.
That's okay. Jackie, just say here.
Here, thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So I just had filled everybody in prior to calling the meeting to order that we're just going to briefly go over the warrant so we can see what's going on for the spring, as well as assign a contact person for each of the major boards. And again, it's just sending an email and introducing yourself and saying, keep me posted if there's anything that advisory board needs to know. It's not attend their meetings or anything like that. And also we need to assign a clerk. So that's what we have to do tonight. So Blythe.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. We have 25 articles at present, and they are fairly straightforward. The first 11 are what you would expect: annual election, unpaid bills from a prior year, which we don't anticipate, budget transfers. We'll definitely have one for snow and ice. Unfortunately, we're going back out again, looks like Thursday night into Friday. The compensation schedule for non-union employees. Number 5, appropriate the 23 budget. Articles 6 and 7 are the water and sewer enterprise fund budgets, as usual. 8 and 9 are capital expenditures from borrowing or from other sources. At this point, not intending to have any, but we always keep them on the list, as you know. Number 10, hearing reports from town and committees. 11 is revolving funds, and no plans change the spending limits next year. The articles that are not as typical, number 12 is a request by the planning board to allocate some funds to get to work on the master plan. They think the whole master plan throughout the whole process, hiring an outside consultant, will cost about $140,000. They have 40 from a state grant, so they're looking for 50 to be able to really get going, come back next fall or next spring for the rest of it. And then the Article 13 is Freeman Kennedy School. They did not get into the MSBA program despite trying for the second time this year. They want to go ahead and work on a feasibility study, so they're asking for $150,000 to do that. And they will be reapplying to the MSBA anyway, and we can talk about it more another time. That has become much more difficult to get into for a variety of reasons. So the school is really getting to the point of being out of space, and so they don't want to lose any more time getting prepared to move forward at some point. Then the next three articles are the CPC, the usual to make the distributions, fund the...
I just want to make sure that everybody knows what she's referring to. The money that she's talking about for Freeman for the feasibility study is for the addition, correct?
Correct, yes. Yep.
So if we approve if the town approves the 150,000 for the feasibility study, the next step would be approving the entire thing, depending on whether or not they have any grants and depending on how much they ask for. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that.
So they're going to try again to get into the MSBA while they're doing the feasibility study. Whether they do or don't get in, they would likely come back in May of 23 for the schematic design portion of the project, which is typically how the MSBA likes to run that, which is probably $2 or $3 million, and then come back for all the rest after that. So, and the 150,000, we have money left in the project for the HOD roof, monies that were left over when that project was closed out, about 80,000, and so they'd only need the difference from another source. So they're not actually looking for 150 in new money this year.
Correct.
Sorry. Moving along, CPC articles, annual distribution.
Sorry, one more second, Blythe. I have notes written down, so I apologize. You think they're going to come back with schematics in May of 23?
They'll come back and ask for the money once they finish the feasibility study.
Isn't that the same time frame as the fire station?
Hopefully the fire station will be ready for a special town meeting in January of 23. Having open bids and knowing the actual price, that's the track that we're on. So they'd be the same calendar year, but not at the same meeting. And the school wouldn't be ready probably to ask for the whole thing at that point. They'd be a little bit behind.
Okay. I just want everybody on the same page that we're looking, because of the cost of inflation and the costs of building, we're looking at much higher budgets for both the Freeman expansion and the fire station than what we had originally talked about. And I understand that what we had originally talked about was a couple of years ago, but it's probably going to be at least 20% more for both than what we had originally discussed. I think the last numbers the advisory board had discussed was 20 million for Freeman and 15 million for the fire station. And I think both of those are going to be significantly higher, probably closer to 2025 for the fire station and 30 for Freeman. Obviously, we're hoping to get grant money for Freeman, but just keep that in mind when we're going through the process. So,
good point. There is the Fire Station Building Committee did have a community meeting last week that's available on NCTV to watch. That's a good overview. And we'll be coming back to the select board to review the schematic design phase at the March 15th select board meeting. So lots of opportunities to learn more about that. Moving on, the CPC just has one project request this year. They're looking for monies to develop a 5-year weed control program and assessment of various ponds and lakes in Norfolk. They've targeted specific ones in the past. They're looking to put together a more global, if you will, town-wide approach. I don't have a dollar figure on that yet. I don't know the number. I'm waiting to hear. After that, a project that was funded at the November 19, 2010 2019 special town meeting to recodify the town's bylaws. We're ready to move forward. We're going to be ready to move forward with that. So there are going to be two separate articles, one for the general bylaws, one for the zoning bylaws, take them up separately. And we will be coming back to you to go over those in more detail. And I can explain more about recodification if you want to know that tonight, a little later. Then we have a few zoning planning board related articles. First one is to accept some easements on Lawrence Street that are needed to be able to construct, for the developer to construct the sidewalk that will go up from the bridge up to the Waits Crossing, which was the Abbeville development on the Franklin line. And then the other articles from the planning board are to again address the issue of accessory buildings and swimming pools and where they go on a lot. Their next article is to amend the zoning bylaw regarding parking requirements and add a waiver provision for some uses. And the last article is to add to the definitions in the zoning bylaw and the table of uses nature center, which would, the properties that most would be affected by that would be the Stony Brook, and also the Leland Field, the former airport property as well. And then the last three articles right now are the typical Chapter 90 authorization, acceptance of grants, and sale of surplus property. We did close the warrant on February 12th. It's not to say we won't see a citizen petition come flying in at some point or something else arises that we need to add to the warrant, but right now I don't have anything else. The select board is going to get a first draft of the warrant to quickly review next Tuesday. So tomorrow or Friday, I will send Erica and Susan a copy of this overview list and the draft warrant. It has not been reviewed by council yet, but it gives you a chance to dig into it when you're ready.
Did you go over the wastewater treatment plant?
No, we haven't. The select board hasn't taken that up yet. We will be having an executive session on that topic next Tuesday. And after that, I'll have a better sense of whether we're going to need to add an article to address that. But just very briefly, we have struggled since the town took it over to collect everything we need to from the budgets we pass each year. And it's particularly difficult this year. We've only collected just shy of $30,000 on a $150,000 budget. So we need to get that resolved. And Todd and I feel strongly we need to get on a better path to be consistent about this, because if we can't raise the money from the users that is required, the town taxpayers will have to pick up the difference. So that's a challenge we would like to see the town get to the other side of, and trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Okay.
It's way more complicated than that, but I'm not going to take your time to.
No, you explained it to me, so I've got a grasp of it. Does anyone have any questions? Obviously,
just
go ahead.
One question on the last item. What executive session?
The select board will go into executive session at their meeting on Tuesday, which just means that it won't be televised. It's contains legal matters that can't be discussed publicly yet. And they'll decide, I think they're trying to decide how they go about getting the people who are supposed to be paying for the wastewater treatment plant to actually pay, because they haven't been paying. And there's some issues with whether or not we are even the rightful owners of it. So they're trying to figure all of that out so that the taxpayers for the whole town don't have to cover the cost of the wastewater treatment plant that only the Stop and Shop lot, Meeting House, and the other condo development use.
Okay, so executive session because they're legal matters.
Correct.
Yes.
Anything else? Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, Blythe, is Carol responsible for putting together the presentation on the bylaws and the zoning bylaw updates?
She and I are working on the general bylaw section with town
Okay.
council, and Rich McCarthy and Bob Bullock are focused on the zoning. So
Can I ask now?
Sure.
And I'm not sure, I'm not criticizing or anything, but there needs to be a quality section by section done of that for people who are going to be bogged down in why is this word being shifted from here to here? If there isn't one, and I'm not saying it's not being prepared, but I can just see this turning into a hours long discussion at town meeting on why they've changed 3 words in this bylaw to that kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
You're absolutely, you're right. And what we'll be producing is a document that's an abridged version of the whole bylaw that
Right.
explains why each section changed. And overall, it's really to make sure that all of our bylaws are in compliance with current state law.
Right.
That if there were references in one place that conflicted with one in another, that they're straightened out. It's not meant to in any way change the intent of any bylaws. If we were to do that, we would be handling them as separate articles on the warrant. And in fact, we have several articles on the warrant for that purpose. So,
Right. Thank you. It was kind of a anticipation question. And the second somewhat related question, there's been discussion for a couple of years about limiting the ability of citizens to file petitions right up until the day that the warrant is closed. Is there any chance we could consider something like that?
that could be an article.
Moving it forward to 2 months before the scheduled town meeting or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, it could, if advisory would be a perfect one to do that, because it certainly impacts your work. If the committee wanted to ask the board to open the warrant to add an article to do that, we can definitely do that.
I would like to volunteer to the committee to talk to folks about figuring out how to put something like that together.
Thank you. That would be great.
Blythe, I have a question for you. And it's in reference to something you said in the beginning when you were talking about the Freeman and the extension and also the fire station and looking at 2023. You mentioned that we're not expecting to be facing both of those things at the same time in 2023, maybe at different points throughout the year, but just wondering if there's possibility that in case things move slower than anticipated with the fire station, we could actually be on the hook in the second half of the year for both, the Freeman cost and the fire station cost. And I understand that they're not asking for we're not on the hook for everything at once, but just wondering what your thoughts are on the possibility of us being in a position where we're looking at both of those at the same time.
So it's a real possibility. And I think it's going to come to a political and town decision about whether or not it's in town's best interest financially, given the needs to put both forward, nearly at the same time. I mean, the police station were supposed to go ahead in 2009 when Freeman Kennedy came forward to be built, and the Freeman Kennedy project moved forward. So that's why we're trying to move the fire station as quickly as we can, but being very careful about, not repeating some of what happened in the past. Is January 2023 the right decision? That'll have to be up to select board and advice from advisory about doing that. I can't, you've already figured out, I'm sure, that the debt on both of those projects, especially if we didn't get into the MSBA, is significant. And the town doesn't have debt really dropping off the books that's outside the levy until 2025 or 26, when the King Philip debt is retired. So there would be an increase in cost until that project came off, and then it can decrease again. But until we know the final numbers on both, I can't tell you what the impact would be right now.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Blythe, I meant to ask you this the other day when we met, but I forgot. I apologize. Is there a way that Todd can look at what the interest rate will be if our bond rating goes down. What I mean by that is we always explain to people that not doing the expansion on the schools, for example, would increase class sizes, which would take down our bond rating from, AAA to A- or whatever it would be. Can you give us an estimate on what that would look like financially if our bond rating goes down? Can Todd do that? Just so we can say, for example, okay, well, if we don't do this, then when we need to borrow money in the future, we're going to be paying $5 million more in interest because of this, so to speak. I'm just throwing those numbers out there, obviously.
Sure. I mean, we could certainly have the financial advisor model any amount of debt at any at various interest rates and tell you what that looks like. That's very straightforward to do. I think I'm not necessarily concerned that our bond rate is going to immediately go down because we don't do a school. I think it's more that, I'm sure you've all heard the same news stories that I have, that the Fed's going to talk about raising interest rates. And so we can talk to our folks and say, well, what do we think the municipal rates for a AA, which we are, might look like, in the next 6 months? It's the best information we have, and we could tell you what that is.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was hoping, so that when we're having the discussion, the reason I ask it now, I forgot to turn my video back on. The reason that I ask it now is because in reality, if we approve a feasibility study, it goes along the lines of the logic that we would also be approving the expansion at some point, because they're tied together. Why would we pay $150,000 for feasibility study if we're not going to approve the expansion at a later date? So I think that having that information and knowing what the interest rates are today, what they would be if our bond rating goes down, what would they be if the interest rates go up, just kind of giving us an idea of what happens if we wait.
Right. Just going back to Freeman Kennedy for a second, if we fund the feasibility study this spring, and then they come back in the spring of 23 and ask for schematic design, it'd probably be back no earlier than the fall of 23 or spring of 24. And depending on when the construction starts, you might be able to, if it's spring of 24, you might be able to borrow at the beginning of 25, which means first payment doesn't come until 26. And you can smooth out that impact to the community a bit better because you've got debt coming off.
Can Freeman wait till 2026?
Well, Ingrid, when we spoke last week, said, from start to finish, you're talking about 5 years from start feasibility to actually kids walking into a classroom. So, they're going to struggle. It's not going to be easy. What the enrollment's been, especially for the younger grades and kindergarten. But I don't think you can do it that much faster. Especially if you're in the MSBA, because it's a very prescribed process.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on that before she moves on?
I have a question on the board reports. Generally, the last few years, we've been not doing board reports because of the COVID meetings and the like, and we're trying to move them quick. Is there a plan to have those happen? It would be interesting to get some updates on specific committees. At the town meeting, when you went through the agenda.
I'm sorry. Are you asking Susan or myself?
Yes.
I think
usually those are dictated.
I think is it going to be a warrant article?
Well,
there's always the committee reports.
Okay.
Jay has generally liked them to be fairly short. I think the Fire Station Building Committee would like to do one this spring because they are very much, we're finishing up schematic design and we'll be wrapping up design development by then. So it would be a perfect time to give people heads up. As far as other committees, it's really up to them to reach out to Jay. And, my office's role has simply been to coordinate whoever wants to be on the list, letting Jay know and putting their names on a slide.
I would just argue our job at the advisory board may also be to be the community voice and ask for some of those, as opposed to just passively waiting and saying where it can go. I think you're exactly right. I'm very curious about those plans, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in the community who is.
Just to give you guys, I'm not sure if she said it, but they're looking at being ready by the fall with all the schematic designs and sending it for approval with the town with a special town meeting in early winter next year for the fire station. So if that gets approved, we'd be looking at approving somewhere along the lines of $20 million for the fire station a year from now.
That's correct. Yeah, the plan is to go out to bid ahead of time. So we can come to town meeting with an exact price. And then, of course, a contingency in case there's unforeseen conditions, but more confidence than perhaps has happened in the past.
Okay.
And
right.
Brian, to Brian's point, like maybe as we get to this next phase where, we're partnering with the boards, maybe that's part of what our role is to ask them, or be part of at least prompt them to give these committee reports, because that's not the only board that we're interested in, right?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Speaking of, that's a nice segue. Blythe, did you want to discuss the within the next 6 months, how many open positions we're going to be having? I know that was something you and I talked about.
Sure. There's a lot of transition in various departments coming up. I'll be leaving at the end of June. In the police department, Chief Stone and Deputy Chief Carroll will be leaving in July and September after a combined, I think, 83 years. The select board decided last meeting that they would agreed with our proposal to promote from within. So we'll be starting that process fairly soon. And then hiring new officers at the lower ranks. In the COA, Sherry Norman is retiring. End of June, early summer. Also in my office, Scott Bragdon is going to be retiring in the summer. I learned late last week that Libby O'Neill, the library director, is departing at the end of March to go to Foxborough. And in Todd's office, the assistant finance director, Teresa Knowles, is also going to be retiring this summer. Don't think I've left anybody out. I think that's it.
Scott's the HR director. Scott's the HR director, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So anyway, point is that's a lot of open positions that we're going to be filling, and there's going to be a lot of new people around. So I just wanted you guys aware of that. All right. Anything else?
I will be giving the select board, Todd and I will be giving the select board the draft budget next week. Not exactly sure which day. We're in the thick of trying to get that sorted out and balanced this week. But I will, of course, send it along to all of you so you can start to look it over and get ready for the discussion we're going to have on it.
Okay.
Sorry, real quick. Are we planning on having town meeting in, it's bounced around, and I don't know if we're still on the outside or we're doing it earlier. I don't remember when.
Planning to be in the middle school on May 10th.
May 10th, okay.
It's back to normal for now.
Until the Omega variant happens.
So it's indoors the way it was in the winter, and it'll be at the middle school in the auditorium, and it's on a Tuesday in May. Okay. All right. So the boards that Blythe and I discussed would benefit from having someone from the advisory board. Just again, stay in contact with them. We're not looking for you to, get involved in their day to day. We're not looking for anything like that. Like Brian and David said, just being aware of what they have coming up, aware of how it may or may not impact advisory, and maybe even assisting and giving advice on, it would be nice if you guys presented this to the town, and can we help you with that in any way? Those types of things. So what Blythe and I came up with is we have zoning board, both of the schools. So it would really just.
You mean planning board or zoning board? Because I don't think.
Zoning, schools, planning, and then fire, police, and DPW. I lump them together as one. They don't have to be if people, people would like to be. The fire development, in addition to the fire department, because the fire department would only be about their normal, asks budgetary wise. Whereas I think we would benefit from having someone just be in contact with the fire, the design review committee, I guess is what it's called, the library, and the select board. We feel that Blythe and I talked about it, the town administrator usually has a pretty good handle on CPC and things like that. So we didn't really feel like someone needed to do those, but just because we only have so many people on the board, I didn't want to overload anybody. But if anyone feels strongly that there's another board they'd just like to take on themselves, that's obviously perfectly fine. These are the ones that I'd like to have someone, stay in contact with. So I'm happy to do the select board. Do I have any volunteers for anything else? Again, I have zoning, both of the schools, because again, you're not really attending their meetings. So it's just staying in contact with either their school committees or the superintendents, the planning board, fire, police, DPW, and library, and then the fire design committee.
Brian had his hand up, sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Dave. You go first.
I'd like to take the DPW and I'd like to break them off from the other two and call that the public safety. And I'd be happy to do those as well. But they really are kind of a different animal in a lot of ways in terms of how they present to the town.
Okay.
If you get my point. Yeah. And I'm happy to do anything else, but I've been doing the DPW stuff basically for few years, and
that's fine.
I think Steve used to do public safety, and he hasn't really obviously been on the board for 3 years. So
we'll put you down for now as DPW, and we'll put fire and police together for someone else.
Yeah. I'm happy to do those too.
Well, let's wait and see, because we might need somebody to.
And I can also, I'll wait and hear what everyone else has to say.
All right, Brian, do you have a preference?
I was thinking the public safety, so that actually works out well. And as an alternate, the new building committee, the fire
so you want to do fire and police, and then you'll do the fire committee, design committee as well? Yeah,
if anyone else isn't there.
Honestly, with fire and police, the same thing as before. It's really just if they're going to be asking for a new hire, a big expensive fire truck, something outside of their normal budgetary things, just anything new that would be coming up. So I don't anticipate that being much at all. So I'll put you down for those. And Erica will send this in an email so everybody remembers and everybody's aware. Okay. So I've got zoning, schools, planning, library left.
I can do the schools. It's Jackie.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie.
In that email, could they just put the contact information for each person? Thank you so much.
Would you prefer the schools? Would you prefer to be in contact with the superintendents or with the school committees?
Superintendent.
Okay.
And then just a quick question, I'm just curious moving forward with this, understanding what you've laid out really clearly, but is there potential for, let's say, if the superintendent or school committee is interested in kind of hearing what the advisory board would say about a proposal, could that be something they share with us that we then present at advisory to talk about? Or is this more just us to update on what they're planning?
I think it can be both. The only thing that the person can't do as the liaison is tell the specific department how the advisory board is going to vote. because obviously you don't know the answer to that. But
Right.
I think you should definitely have the autonomy to say, you know what, I think this is something that you need to bring before the advisory board. Let Susan and Erica know, and let's get you on the agenda, because this sounds like something we're going to need to discuss. And, so get your ducks in a row, and here's the date that we want to hear from you. That kind of thing is certainly would be great. And again, like for schools, I anticipate that's just a once a year, couple times a year when they're doing their budgets, letting us know if there's anything outside the norm, if they're going to be over their percentage, things like that, so that we're prepared. But I don't really anticipate any of these, maybe zoning or planning. Other than that, I don't really anticipate any of these really getting into the weeds of what the specific committees do. So, okay. Library, zoning, planning. Jonathan, Jamil, and Mike.
I don't care. I'm happy for anything that anybody doesn't want.
Yeah.
But I will say that I'm off in this board in June. Or after meeting. So I don't know if that.
Well, I mean, I'm really right now focusing on getting through the spring. Did I know you were leaving? I might not have known that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we talked about it. I'm going with Blight, wherever Blight's going.
Okay.
Then
All right.
I'll take the library.
Okay. Jonathan. Way to take the easy one.
Susan, can I ask a question? When you say zoning, you mean zoning changes, right?
I just
Or do you
mean
mean the zoning board of appeal, because they don't have a whole lot that.
I mean, I know that most of the zoning changes fall under the planning board, but every now and then the zoning board of appeals has something on the warrant. So I just felt that someone should be in contact with them.
Okay.
But, again, so planning is left, which is obviously the biggest one, especially this spring, because it's going to have all of the zoning bylaw changes. So I need somebody that at least understands the planning board a little bit. Takers?
You know what I'm doing, right? I'm going to say yes, but I don't.
I know you
want to
are.
say yes.
I know you don't, but I appreciate it, David. Thank you. And Jamil, that leaves you with zoning. You're all right with that? That's the zoning board of appeals.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Wait a minute. So Kiara didn't show up and we didn't give her anything? This is not fair.
Well,
Ooh,
Kiara is 34 weeks pregnant and is only going to.
That's okay. Never mind. I'm stepping back from my previous.
Me too.
She's already told me she's very limited in the amount of time she's going to be here this spring. I'm hoping that she will catch up on the meetings via YouTube and then at least come for when we're voting. So. Right. As long as she's able to catch up. So I'm not going to assign her with anything now, but we're going to have to revisit this in the fall because we're going to have at least 2 new members in the fall, possibly 3. So it's going to need to be revisited. Brian, Aaron Hunt, I believe is the head of the design review committee, correct, Blythe? Yeah. Aaron Hunt, he used to be on, I don't know if you know him, but he was on the B1 committee and he was on planning.
He was the
planning or zoning. I can't remember which, but he was either on planning or planning board. Okay. Thank you. Planning. And he was also on the B1 committee. And then Chief Kenny. And then there's a few other members, 4 or 5 other people, but I would assume just staying in contact with Aaron and Chief Kenny would be sufficient.
Kevin Champagne is the chairman, and okay. Brian, I can get you that information of everybody and their contact info tomorrow.
That would be great. Yeah. If you could send that to Erica, and then she'll add that to the list. And then Erica, I know the superintendents, just include in the email the superintendent's contacts for Jackie and whoever the current chair of the planning board is for David, and then the DPW chief, fire and police directors, chiefs for Brian and David. And who is the current zoning chair? I don't know who that is anymore.
It's escaping me. I can get that to you.
Okay. And then also one of the other positions, I don't know if they filled it yet or not, is the head of the conservation, the town employee conservation, not the conservation committee, also retired, Janet. So have you, have they,
in the process of,
probably not you, the person you want to talk to, you probably want to talk to Rich.
For planning?
No, for conservation.
No, I know. I was just explaining that was one of the other positions that we.
Okay.
filling is
Janet retired?
Janet retired, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my. I used to be on the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
She's a wonderful little lady.
Yes, she is. So, all right. I think that's everything. Erica, is there anything that I missed information wise that you think you're going to need to send these emails out to everybody?
Nope, I just gotta look up everyone's contact information, but I think I have it all.
Okay. And I don't know if you heard me. I'm going to do the select board. So I'll just stay in contact with Kevin and
Kevin.
CC. Yeah. Well, he's already on this board as a liaison, but he's not he's not the chair of select board right now. So, but yeah. Okay. So that
I have a question about that as well. So we don't have town emails because all official business is here. Is that okay with correspondence on personal emails as part of these committee liaison activities? Okay.
Yes, only because you only need it, I think, if you're the chair, correct? As far as the advisory board goes.
Yeah, that was what the rule was, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, again, staying in contact and through email. And, if they say, hey, this meeting you might want to attend and you can't, then you can always just watch it on YouTube and fill us in when we do meet. And the main thing that I'm looking for, which is also going to be Blythe, is letting them know this as well, as for the people who are coming for the spring warrant, anyone who wants something on the spring warrant this year needs to have their votes and their meetings done and be able to present to us in time for us to vote. And if they can't, then we're going to, like we discussed last fall, then we're going to IP it or not take a position on it if we don't have the information, because waiting and getting behind and making ourselves crazy to try to get things when they, in a timely manner is
there
not, we're already 2 people short this spring. So
is there
we need to get everything done when we can get it done.
Is there a way we can communicate that to not the departments necessarily, but the boards that we're dealing with?
Yes.
Like the planning board is one of the ones that has been notoriously late on this stuff.
Yes, I actually already spoke to Rich, and he is going to come to us probably our first official meeting. Yeah, here we go.
Rich works for the board though.
Yes, he's going to come to us March 2nd for just to brief us on what they're doing. And we're going to give him our timeline of when we expect them to be ready and be back to us. He's not going to present everything. It's just, again, it's an overview. He's going to let us know where they are in the process so that we can say, okay, if this is March 2nd, we need to vote by this date. So backing it up, you need to have your voting done and be able to present to us what you're pushing on the warrant by this date. So that's why he's coming. And I'm doing that specifically this year because there are so many zoning bylaw changes, and I didn't want us to get, crazy at the end when we were needing to vote. So I wanted to make sure.
The bulk of them is the ones through the process of updating the bylaws, right? There's not a massive other zoning bylaw change thing coming down the pipe.
There's only 3 others.
Okay. All right. I had a fear that they were redoing the B1 district or something.
No, but it is, as with any zoning changes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't like we're going to rezone Route 1.
Yeah. So right now I have Rich for March 2nd, Blythe, and the town for the 16th, any other departments from the 23rd, the schools on the March 30th. And the final zoning meeting that we need to have, or planning board meeting, I should say, where they present to us by April 5th, because we have to vote after that. I backed it up. So it looks like we're going to start most likely next week with Rich. We might be able to take 1 week off in between. But then starting on the 16th, it'll be every week until we vote. So.
Cool. We'll need to spend time on those recodifications, and we're meeting with town council tomorrow and early next week to be ready to do all that. We've gotten everything back from the code company. So I think that would be an important topic on one of the one of your nights. And the warrant that I'll send you all tomorrow has the exact language of the zoning articles in it already. So hopefully we're in a little bit better shape than we were last year.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So again, we'll meet next week, March 2nd, with Rich, and then we'll take it looks like I haven't scheduled anybody. Eric and I will get on scheduling everyone for the weeks after that. And then we'll be done by hopefully April, whatever the week after April 5th is. I'm sorry. Let me look at my calendar.
13th.
Thank you.
You don't have to have your write-ups.
April 5th. I'm sorry, I apologize. They're voting on April 5th. April 6th is when they would come to us. And we have to have all voting and our write-ups done by April 22nd. So our final meeting for any leftover voting, i.e. the planning board or whatever it still needs to be done, would be on the 13th. So we're going all the way through April 13th, and then we're off until town meeting, which would be first week in May. So, all right. I think that's everything.
Wait a minute. Second Tuesday in May or first Tuesday in May?
It's the second Tuesday in May.
Thank you.
So it's May 10th.
Thank you.
But the warrant goes to print on April 22nd. Because it has to be mailed 14 days in advance, blah. So yeah, we're looking to have all voting, all presentations done by April 13th. That does give us April 6th to add anyone in addition to planning if they're coming back. So anyone, if there's any questions that come up in voting that we didn't have someone here for, we have the time to add them in. So I wanted to make sure we had an extra day in there if we needed it. All right. So that's the calendar. Everybody's been assigned something, and that's the warrant. So the last thing I need is a clerk. And the only person not here is Kiara, and I wouldn't ask her to do it anyway because of her impending arrival. So I need someone to step up to be the clerk. Again, we'll do it just like we did with Kristen. I just need to get through this season. We can revisit it, and someone else can take it over again in the fall. No one needs to take on a 3-year clerkship. We just need to go season by season and take turns. So
I could do the last one.
Okay. Mike, thank you so much.
Can I?
Erica,
thank you, Michael. And I'm happy to give you a.
Erica, can you make sure that Mike is listed as the new clerk on the website, that it's updated, or on the advisory board page? And Mike, Kristen already has the minutes from the last meeting done, but because she's off the board, she couldn't sign them and turn them in. So if you, David,
I can be in touch with her.
David,
I actually asked Erica at the beginning of the meeting if she could send them to me, and I reviewed them. If you'd rather me do it.
Whatever, you two work
out. On top of stuff. No, I've already done it.
Okay. Does Mike have to be sworn in as clerk, or is it just a perfunctory? I'm not sure.
Perfunctory, I think.
Okay.
I was never sworn in.
Okay. If you were never sworn in, that's great. I just know I was as the chair, so I'm not sure how that worked with the clerk. Okay, great.
Well, what I'm saying is that I have minutes for the last meeting that I reviewed during this meeting because Erica sent them to me, so we can.
So are we ready to vote on them?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great.
That's what I'm saying. But now I have to find them and pull them back up. Sorry. Just to get it out of the way, basically. I don't mean it that way, but just to stay on top of this and stay ahead of the curve. I'd like to make a motion to have the meeting minutes of November 9th, 2021 accepted as reviewed and edited. I need a second.
Thank you, Mike. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call vote, because it's Zoom. We have to do all votes have to be roll call for Zoom meetings. David Lutz.
Aye.
Brian Beachkowski.
Aye.
Jackie needs to be live on her camera too.
Yeah. Jonathan Hurwitz.
Aye.
Michael Huff.
Aye.
Jackie Katz. Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Jackie.
Aye.
Thank you. Jamil Siddiqui.
Aye.
And Susan Klein, aye. So those minutes have been accepted. And David, are you going to be able to drop them off to?
I'll drop them off tomorrow or
Okay.
Monday. Tomorrow or Monday, but it'll happen before Monday. So
Mike, Erica will send you the minutes after each meeting. And then if you want, I'm assuming David or Kristen can walk you through what to do, which is just read over them and make sure that they reflect what we did actually discuss, which Erica's very good. So shouldn't be any issues with that. And then we just present them, hopefully to stay on top of things. I'd like to present them each week. But if you get a week or two behind, it's okay. It's just, they need to be done within two meetings of when it was. So usually a week or two, a meeting or two doesn't make a difference, but after that, we don't want to get behind. All right.
No problem.
If there's nothing else, I will see you all next week. Have a good night. Anybody? Okay. So Erica, send an update letting everybody know what the calendar is for next week and that there's meetings, and go ahead and schedule them and post them to the agenda. And for next week, you can say that it's a brief overview done by Rich McCarthy with the planning board is what our agenda is next week. And then after that, it'll just be the various boards that we have presenting to it.
motion
right.
to adjourn.
Thank you. See you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Have a good week.